after the elections. We thought we'd make it. So thank you all for being here. This is an ERIE event. Our group is Entheogenic Research, Integration, and Education. How many people have not been to an ERIE event before? Oh, actually quite a few. Wow. And how many people have? Great. Well, welcome for the people that haven't. Welcome. We started off as a student group at the California. Can everyone hear me back there? Yeah. Okay. We started off as a student group at the California Institute of Integral Studies, which is a transpersonal psychology school down in Mission and 10th area. We kind of a bunch of students in the class taking entheogenic shamanism. We were all really fascinated in this research, having really profound experiences and wanting to share them with others, find ways to integrate these experiences into our daily life. So we started our group up. Had a conference right away, an awesome conference out of the Happiness Institute. I don't know if you remember that in 2012. It was down on Van Ness Market area. Since then, we've been doing about a monthly event and also integration circles about a month, once a month. And those are peer circles, about 10 to 20 per circle, and an opportunity for us to share together. Part of our acronym is research, so most of us are interested in different types of research around plants, nature, ecology, but focusing on ayahuasca or iboga or 5-MeO-DMT or DMT. Also interested in the realms of MDMA, ketamine, LSD as it works with psychotherapy and other types of paradigm-shifting thought processes. But we focus a little bit more on the nature side. We also want to try and bring in a lot of different voices, not just the biomedical, but also indigenous scholars, underground practitioners, philosophers, artists, musicians, and the like. So it's been a really nice way to bring community together. I'm always, always amazed at the different conversations that are happening throughout the event. And that's one of the things that's really fantastic about the event tonight is Marcelo's been really bringing fantastic conversation to us over the last 3 or 4 years. He's spoken with us quite a bit, brought some healers up from Brazil as well to speak with us. So the talk is going to be pretty great tonight. My name is Larry. I'm an organizer of ERIE. I'm also a PhD student or dissertation, I guess getting my dissertation now. I'm studying ayahuasca experiences and looking at profound transformative experiences that we can find integration skills and strategies to bring back here. And that's kind of another thing we're trying to do with our group. We're actually looking either to be here in San Francisco or in the East Bay to create a center or a hub where we can engage in these conversations more often. So when somebody has a big experience, that we can both provide the tools to our friends and community, but also find places where we can also engage with people as well. So that's kind of what our group is. We're a 501c3, so if you want to make any nonprofit donations, we do have that. We have some brochures up front, some t-shirts up front as well. We have another event, November 17th here. It's going to be pretty amazing. Dr. Luis Eduardo Luna is going to be here, and he's first time he's been in the Bay Area in a really long time. He's coming up from Brazil. He's done a lot of work. Terrence McKenna wrote his first book, True Hallucinations, at Luna's place way back in the day. He's been really amazing facilitator as well, so he's really well versed on the inner experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about navigational tools and skills within the inner experience. So that's pretty great. That's going to be here November 17th, which is I think next Thursday. So great. And without further ado, as I mentioned earlier, this is Marcelo. Marcelo decided to write me a little bit ago. As we're kind of in this very strange and unusual time where all these sort of paradigms are kind of coming together at once. We're having a really great dialogue and conversation about where are we at in this conversation as technology kind of overrides and goes kind of past our ethics already. We're doing things that we're like, hey, is that okay to do that? What's going on here? And what do psychedelics help us with? What insights do we have? What sort of skill sets can we learn from these deep inner experiences that can help us with that? So we had this really beautiful dialogue, and Marcelo said he wanted to come and share his wisdom with us. So I'll read his little bio and his abstract as well, and then introduce him. We'll have about 45 minutes for Marcelo to share. We'll take 5 to 10 minute break, use the bathroom if you like, or just kind of unwind for a second. Then we'll come back together and we'll have more of an audience dialogue discussion with everybody, okay?
And we're going to screen a short film.
We're going to screen a very short 4 to 5 minute film.
10-minute piece.
10-minute piece, I'm sorry. 10-minute piece of the game as well. All right, so the abstract, so we can all get ready. Are we living in a computer simulation? Is extraterrestrial intelligence involved? Is Mars our next destination? These questions have recently leaped out of science fiction books into the realm of the tangible possibilities. Has the future arrived to save us from total demise, or is everyone going bonkers? In this talk, Marcelo will trace these ideas and the danger they posit back to the unchecked romance between psychedelics and technology, one that started when Silicon Valley executives inevitably encountered the psychedelic renaissance. Counterbalancing the trends in the field, Marcelo will invite us all to remove the veil that shrouds the primary fantasy upon which such ideas stand and reveal a disturbing reality. We will examine the shadow side of psychedelic futurism through the lenses of archetypal psychology, paying special attention to the metaphysical foundations at the heart of the tech world and the lasting impacts of the centuries-old sequestering of faith by literalism. But behold, he won't leave you hanging, of course, right? In the end, he will suggest a remedy for an alternative to the Matrix Terminator world. Marcelo right here is an alum from the Philosophy, Cosmology, and Consciousness Department at California Institute of Ethical Studies. He's the director and producer of Involution, which is a film he's crowdfunding right now for. He'll have his message on Indiegogo. We can send it to you later. He might show it as well. He was also born and raised in Brazil and has been initiated into earth-based cosmologies from different South American native traditions. His areas of interest in Western thought are the new cosmology, integral ecology, cultural history, depth psychology, entheogenic shamanism, and archetypal astrology. And I'm sure in the discussion section, if you have any questions about any of those, he'd be happy to answer those as well. So thank you very much for being here, and a big round of applause for Marcelo.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. It's an honor for me to be here. It's such a pilgrimage. It's really awesome to have this opportunity to share. Just so I can get a sense of the room, how many people here have had experiences with psychedelics? Okay. Good. And how many of you have had experiences of psychedelics in a natural environment, like in the wilderness or in mountains and forests? Okay. And how many of you have had profound, transformative experiences in the sense of experience that really shattered your life and you couldn't really make sense of it after it? What happened? All right, pretty cool. So I'm all friends here. Okay, so and then a last question. How many of you have, let's say, empathy for the idea of bridging psychedelics and technology in the sense that that could take us to the next level of evolution, so to speak? Okay, great. So, as a philosopher, I think I should start right from the onset. I'm going to just, bring some quick philosophy here for us to just, to get in the mood of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to read this quote for you. I have included among those remedies to avoid the misuse and excess of the passions, the forethought and diligence through which we can correct our natural faults, by striving to separate within ourselves the movements of the blood and the spirits from the thoughts to which they are usually joined. Descartes. So, just a pause for us to think about it a little bit. So the reason I'm invoking Descartes here is because I think that he is at the core of everything that is happening now, and the way our brains perceive reality. It's pretty much, the foundation is the Cartesian split. Descartes didn't create it. It has been on development since the birth of the Western mind. But it was through Descartes that became conscious approach to consciousness or to what we are. And pretty much what Descartes did was to separate the mind from the body. So that's, this is an idea most of us are familiar with, and a lot of people in academia love to play around with, mentioning Cartesianism and this is Cartesian split, mind and the body, and people, if you go to a non-duality conference, a lot of people are going to talk about Descartes. But I think that what is difficult is for us to really understand what it means, what that split between the mind and body means, and how it affects the way we walk on Earth. Because it's something that is so deep and so profound, it's at the core of beings, that we seldom have the means to access that and understand that we are really living in a world that is created through this primal separation. So what is the separation between the mind and the body? We understand that the world is composed of objects and things that we can manipulate with our science and technology, and that we have brains, and that's where the meaning and purpose of what we do. It's all concentrated here. We think about the world, so we're relating to a world of things, but we are not things, right? We are human beings, and we have purpose, we have meaning. Everyone here has a destiny, so to speak. And so, what brings me to this new, it feels like sci-fi has really arrived, that we are living in the future. The future is now, right? I mean, everybody has that feeling. You just read it in the news more and more, it's kind of really incredible. Which makes this fantasy even more compelling. So why am I calling it fantasy? From the perspective of depth psychology, there's more to the world than the Cartesian split would let us believe. So, how can I put this? Ideas, right? Imagination, they are primary. So everything we believe is founded upon a primary idea that have, given shape to the beliefs we have. So let's use cosmology. We believe, or we know for sure, science told us that the Earth is this tiny speck of dust floating in this gigantic void, lifeless, purposeless cosmos. So we are sort of floating adrift in this vastness. And if I see that you disagree with me.
No, I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. No, I mean,
I just wondered where this is going.
Yeah, you're going to get there. So why am I bringing this? Because this is at the core of how we see each other, how we interact with each other. We are beings that are all, insulated into our own beings, into our own brains, into our own minds, and we're interacting to other beings. And this is post-modernity also. It's like we are adrift. The center doesn't hold, so we don't have a cosmology or a guiding principle that everyone is following. It's pretty much everything is up for grabs. So, past modernity. So modernity was a time when we believed that modernity and post-modernity, they are both happening now. One haven't superseded the other. They are kind of, simultaneous. So all of us, institutions and the structures we live in, they are modern, meaning that we have this understanding that we are in sort of an evolutionary ascent from more primitive modes of being to modern technological, and reason has come to free us from savagery and bring us, expand our lifespans, or bring us, all the good things that medicine and technology and the comforts, everything we take for granted, everything that we love, we owe it to modernity. But at the same time, now we are in this postmodern world where meaning has sort of lost its center, and everyone is experimenting with everything. Everything is happening at once. We are borrowing from different traditions. There's not a single narrative that we can follow.
No, but surely there is. There's many narratives.
There are many narratives. There's not one single narrative that everyone is hopping on and following as a guiding principle, as there was, for instance, in the medieval times, where everyone was sort of entrained in the Christian principle of salvation.
Only in Europe.
Only in Europe. Well, not only in Europe, but, well, you can say that. But I mean, we are all descendants of the European matrix that, this is the Western mind. So the Western mind was forged
The
in
Greek
Europe,
mind.
and then it expanded, yes, it expanded, it started with the Greeks, and then it went through the period of Christianity and Hebraic traditions. These are two trends. I wasn't intending to get too much into that. It's just sort of an introduction to the things that I want to talk about. Let me check here my notes to see if I can give it some linearity. So in any way, what this means is that this modern narrative and the Cartesian split that has been guiding our lives have put us in this mode of being in the world that I call literalism, according to which everything we hear has to have some kind of counterpart in the physical world. It has to be, we don't believe that things are real unless they can be proven. And they can only be proven by our tools. And the only things our tools, the tools that we create, can do is to prove whatever is physical, whatever has a physical existence. So whatever is not physical cannot be proven. Therefore, it cannot really exist, or it cannot really be taken seriously by conversations, in academia, mainstream academia, or science, or technology. And we all know that. But of course, since we all have had experience of psychedelics, we know that there is something else that is not physical, that is not material, and that is part of existence. Or maybe we think it's just, how our lives, our minds are operating under the effects of those substances. But the point is that literalism is sort of a worldview that is going on, it's like an undercurrent. We don't perceive that it's operating on us. But we have that sense. For instance, take entertainment. So all the myths and all the stories that we're telling ourselves, when they are rendered through media and film, there's a lot of physicality in there. So in order to portray, the actions of the deeds of a god, it's gonna be like, a super giant, super powerful, anthropomorphic being that's gonna cause a lot of physical disruption, and you have like these transformers, or like these machines, or these dinosaurs, or you name it, dragons. They are all physical creatures, so they are rendered as physical, and therefore they tend to put us in this mode of thinking that things have to be physical, and they have to have this physical counterpart. So it wasn't like this in the medieval times, for instance, when people had more of a sense that the spiritual realm is not really analog to the physical realm, and the laws that operate in the spiritual realm, they are different. Now for us, when we think in terms of spirit or soul or anything that has a spiritual connotation, we immediately try to put in a box and think of maybe a ghost, or like a transparent figure floating around. So these are all attempts that our minds are making to try to bring it back to physicality, to give it form and shape as we have learned to see the world through physical things. And I think it gets in the way. One of these ideas, for instance, is the idea of UFOs. So we have, everybody's super excited when the talk about UFOs start to surface. And I think it's rather interesting. There was a video that leaked a couple of years ago of a Canadian governmental officer. I don't know. He was like maybe a minister or something. He had like a high political position, and he started talking about that the information on UFOs had to be. We had to talk about that. The fact that he was saying that it caused a big commotion. People were all finally, people are revealing the secrets that we all have always wanted to know. Now my question is, why would a politician be the right person to talk about these kind of encounters, about knowing about extraterrestrial intelligence? The only way we can think of that being an appropriate person to talk about these issues is if we think in terms of physicality once again, because they have whatever there is. They have remains of a fallen spacecraft, or they have frozen the body of an alien entity or whatever. Now it's really funny. Why would these beings from outer space decide to show their faces to high-ranking politicians? What would be the connection? Do they come to Earth and say, well, who would be the most appropriate people for us to present ourselves to? It would be like, right? Maybe politicians, like they're supposed then to be the most intelligent people, right? The ones that represent humanity. And well, I think that seeing what's happening now, we kind of have to revision our ideas about that. Whereas if somebody wants to know about God, they would go ask maybe the priest or the pope, somebody who's actually intimate with the idea of God. And the people we have who are intimate with the idea of the other, they know very little about the other. Because in order for us to understand the other, we first have to understand ourselves. And we have to cut through this idea that physicality is always a mirror for everything that is happening to us. So the point that I'm trying to make is, for instance, how many of you have had experience with ayahuasca? Okay. So, and how many of you have had experiences with LSD? All right. So LSD is a substance, well, I'm not going to get into that now. I'm just going to talk about ayahuasca. There's this Peruvian painter called Pablo Maringo. I don't know how many of you are familiar with his work. He makes these beautiful paintings, and sometimes it's very complex images full of characters, and there's a lot going on there in the forest, and all these spirits and animals and people, everybody interacting. And sometimes you see like those little UFOs floating around. But if you really pay attention to his UFOs, they look more like creatures, not really crafts, not really like spaceships or something made out of, not a mechanism. So it's sort of like they have like this insect wings, or they are just like these geometrical shapes like assembled that look or resemble a living being or a living creature or something that is just floating around. But at the same time, they really do look like UFOs. So in this sense, the spiritual sense to which Pablo Maringo was trying to speak, what he was trying to address is that these are sort of spirit entities. So they are like spiritual vehicles that we use to cross from this to a different dimension of existence. But then comes our literal minds, and we see the UFO, and we keep trying to see for evidence, physical evidence of UFOs. Whereas in his cosmology, it's more of a spiritual, it's a spiritual quality, it's a spiritual portal that we can find if we really, can align our minds during these experiences to cross through other modes of being. And when I'm saying of other modes of being, I'm not necessarily implying that there's like a mirror world out there that is exactly like ours, but it's another dimension. Nor am I saying, for instance, when we think of gray people or aliens, we don't realize what we are doing, that we are projecting our own anthropomorphization, is that how I say it? Into whatever is unknown and mysterious to us. So if there is life in this universe beyond human or beyond what is happening on the earth, it has to be alike. It has to be of the same substance and the same kind of origins than us. Maybe they are different skin color, they don't have hairs, or their eyes are bulged and gigantic, but they have this anthropomorphized shape, which is in a sense our projection of our longing for meaning out there. But since the out there that we have is, a blank void, right? It's just like this empty space with floating planets that are just like, conglomerates of matter or gas that are there, and we are sort of a miracle here. We hope that there's something else there. So we are kind of, we are screaming in this dreadful, void, and waiting for the echo to reach back to us. That's pretty much what's happening. Now there's another way of being in the world. What would be that other way of being in the world? That's a way of understanding that the Cartesian split I was talking about. It is the mode of being that we are all part of, but it's not necessarily the full story. So indigenous traditions and ancient people that came before the birth of the Western mind, they were more in touch with that mode of being, which is more fully embodied than what we have now. The body is going to be essential to what I'm talking about. So to this fully embodied mind, there's no separation. Of course, there is a level of separation we can play around with. I am sitting here, you are sitting there. I am not you. But on the other hand, if we let if we just let all these concepts that we have erected around ourselves to dissolve, more and more we start to realize that there's no real separation. And some experiences with psychedelic can really take us to that place. What happens though, is that when we come back from these experiences, we need to make sense of it. And when we are trying to make sense of it, something is already being lost in translation. It's inevitable. And not only, when I say lost in translation, it's not only something is being lost by the way we are telling our stories to our friends, but even by the way we're telling the stories to ourselves. So even trying to remember what happened is already framing this experience under the Cartesian premises. So we sort of mold and shape our experiences to fit a deeper and more profound paradigm that is, guiding our lives. But we do it so unconsciously. So this is why, for instance, we are having a lot of this, this whole this dance between psychedelics and technology is deeply informed by these underlying assumptions that we can't tap into unless we do a lot of psychological work and understand how we are, projecting or mirroring or trying to give shape to something that is really ineffable, that we don't have the words to speak because our language is kind of restricting us to remain in this space here. And these things, they transcend this space. So we're bringing the stars together, but everything that is happening to us is contingent. So why wouldn't people in the medieval age or in ancient times? I know there's people who have all these theories about ancient people seeing UFOs and having and seeing this painting in the caves that supposedly were they were depicting technology. But it seems that this is more a projection of our own minds, trying to make what is there make sense into what is here, meaning what is here is our world. And we're trying to make sense of a world that was totally different than ours, a mode of consciousness, a structure of consciousness that was entirely different than ours. And we can't really understand that unless, we put it in a box, so we have it under our own, limits of what can or what cannot be. Is it getting too complicated here? Am I going in a tangent?
So if you can't contain the unaffable, the infinite, how do you suggest, if you can't contain it through conceptualization, since it's not a static structure, that being consciousness, what do you suggest would be the surface of technology? In other words, if technology is an extension of our concept of material,
so
what kind of technology would be free from the constraints and the limitations? You know what I mean? In other words, we have organic, dynamic systems that include love, soul, presence, interaction, all this non-physical stuff. But technology we don't usually see as, it's not organic, but we're moving in that direction, aren't we?
Yes, we are. So I don't think there is any way that we have to contain it. We have to contain these experiences. We must. This is part of being human. We need to, assign meaning to our experiences. We go through events, but these events become meaningful, and then they become memories or a history or a narrative. That's what we need. That's the fuel of our lives. So there's no way we can remain, with the ineffable. We have to bring it some shape.
I would just throw out the argument that it seems that in a breakthrough of consciousness, where one gets a sense of humor about the limits of your intellect, that you shatter that limitation, and you can laugh gloriously at your stupidity.
Yeah.
So I'm making an argument just the opposite of what you're saying. Not only do we not have to contain it, we don't want to contain it.
Temporarily, but that's like humor, right? Humor is this disruption of the narrative. That's why we laugh, right? Somebody's telling a joke, and when the joke like that is reached that moment when the narrative is disrupted, we're left with nothing, and then we crack in laughter. So this is because we can't hold that for too long. because this is kind of being facing the abyss. And that's why we laugh. So laughter and trauma, maybe they are interrelated somehow. But that would be going somewhere else. Okay? I'm trying to be, so the whole point of technology is that technology is a development of underlying myth. And this myth has a name. It's the myth of Prometheus. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the myth of Prometheus. So Prometheus was a mythic Greek figure. He was a titan, so he was like the son of gods. And he's known for having stolen fire from the gods to give it as a gift to humanity. Right? But not only that, Prometheus was a trickster. And he tried to outsmart the gods by, he was supposed to make a bargain and give Zeus and the other gods of the Olympus meat. So what he did is that he got like the bad parts of a cow, the entrails or whatever is not the best meat, and he would hid it under a piece of meat and offer it to Zeus, and then he kept the good parts hidden in a liver or something like that. So he was tricking Zeus, and for that he was punished. So he was punished for both having stolen fire from the gods and giving it to humanity, which is pretty much the movement that we have done since the onset of modernity, or even before that. I would say even before the Greeks. That's when we started to guide ourselves through this solar image of a solar god. It started in Egypt, and then it was slowly evolving. In Greek, it was Apollo, the sun god, and then in Christianity, we have Christ, even Buddha. This all is called like the Axial Age that happened 2,500 years ago, when all the sages and mystics and spiritual people, they were having this direct contact with this solar logos. So we have been following this idea of the solar god. And what happened is, in modernity, we became so identified with the sun god that we reached that point where we didn't need to have a god anymore. So we're not identified with the solar god, but we are identified as the solar logos itself. So what was God before, and we would have this external relationship with God the Creator, has become our own power of creativity and inventiveness and the capacity we have to alter the world and to create a better future for us. And this is, the emphasis that our culture puts in the brain. So we see the brain everywhere. The brain is like the cover of magazines. The brain is the center. The brain is the center of a veneration. Like the religion, the secular religion we have is this religion that honors the brain as the center of creation, which is really, it's a development upon the old Christian tradition. It's not, it is a break with Christianity, but it's also, building upon Christianity. We're taking it to the next level. So that's the story of Prometheus. By stealing the fire from the gods and giving it to humanity, we now have the divine power of creation within ourselves.
Well, he flew too close to the sun. Are we flying too close to the sun?
Are we flying too close to the sun?
That's Icarus.
That's what
Oh yeah,
no, that's
definitely.
Icarus.
Definitely, most definitely. Right, that's what happened when it gets too
People
cold.
were Icarus, not Prometheus.
Yeah, no, but I think it makes a lot of sense. The more we can observe what happens in myth, the more we will clarify some things that usually they are hidden from our conscious mind. For instance, this story of Icarus and getting scorched.
Yeah.
This is what is happening to the Earth right now. I mean, the whole talk about climate change and what is happening now, the sea level and the oceans, is in mythical terms, this is the scorching of the Earth because we are just going too close to the sun. So this is the whole. But in parallel to that, there's another movement going on. And this movement has been triggered by the outreach of plant medicine and native earth-based traditions reaching to the Western world. So ayahuasca mostly, but peyote and San Pedro and all these traditions, Mazatec traditions with mushrooms, they have a different way of relating with the spiritual world, and which is earth-based. So whereas the myth of Christianity and the Hebraic traditions and even like the Greek gods, they are sort of separated, and so you know the Christian God created the world, and then he took a step back. Right? He's not participating in the creation. He created it and left it for us. Whereas in this, which have lots of psychological repercussions, if we really take it, you know, to its conclusion, what it means for us to be unable to have a proper relationship with the earth, because we don't have, you know, deep within our psychic structure, we don't have a guiding story that enables us to cathect the earth. Cathect meaning to fall in love with the earth. It's the amount of energy you put into something to the extent that you fall in love with it, and then your whole life is orbiting that idea. Our idea is the sun. So even though we have displaced the earth in postmodernity, now the earth is not the center of the universe anymore as it was for medieval people. The earth was the center of the universe, meaning it was like the denser part of the universe, and the center of the earth was the anus of Satan. That's how they saw it. So we'd go from the center, which was the most dense part, to etheric layers that will be more and more rarefied and reach into these higher spiritual levels. Now we displaced the earth. The earth is not the center of the universe anymore. It's just a tiny planet floating among billions and trillions of stars and other planets.
It's the center of our universe.
It's not the center of our universe. So because we have cathected the sun.
We live.
The sun is the center of our universe.
No,
so
we live here.
We live
This
here.
is our universe.
Yes, but at the same time we are considering the hypothesis of maybe colonizing Mars as a escape route to, you know, the apocalypse that we have, you know, sold to ourselves. So what I'm saying, in a sense, we haven't yet found a way of falling in love with the earth and having it as a guiding narrative that will lead us forward. We are still very much connected to the sun and the Promethean myth, the idea that we stole the fire from the gods. We have this fire and nothing can hold us back. We have the capacity to create or to, you know, if the earth is an experiment that has gone wrong, well, you know, let's hop on a rocket ship, go to Mars and start all over again from scratch, which is kind of very, I don't want to use adjectives, but
it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, we're trying to leave a dying planet to start life on one that is already dead. And there are other dimensions to that idea, which is the sense that our evolution is taking us. So you see now the parallel between the you know, primal fantasy of Christianity of finding redemption somewhere outside of the earth. So we're looking to redeem our sins in heaven. Heaven means leaving the earth, which is this veil of tears and suffering we are living in. And our souls are sort of, you know, walking this earth, learn something, but our salvation is going to come through living the earth. And these earth spiritual traditions, they operate in a completely opposite framework. So it is through the experience of the earth that we are having a spiritual experience. So the spiritual redemption is not waiting for us outside there. But it's, you know, this is what James Hillman, psychologist James Hillman would call soul making. Everything that is happening to us here, being in the veil of tears, is actually an opportunity for us to keep doing soul making, which is a process. So we are constantly learning. And it's related to being in our bodies. Huh?
Is that like baby making?
Baby making?
Is that the same as soul making?
Soul making. Well, I don't know if baby making could be. I'm a father of three, and then
only two souls.
yeah. I think
There's a tradition where the soul is not automatic. You have to consciously make it. So it doesn't.
Right. The soul. In the sense that I'm saying, the soul is not a thing. Again, let's be careful about trying to bring everything into the analogy of physicality. The soul is not something that is floating here, is inhabiting our body, or the soul is not something separate from us that we experience through our bodies. The soul is the very process of being alive. It's the very process of having emotions. It's the very process of feeling pain, or grief, or suffering. It's the process of having, like luminous encounters with the ineffable. This is all soul. So soul is not something that, again...
So it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, exactly. It's not everywhere, it's all that is for us as being in the world. Which, okay, I'll have maybe to bring, there's also an idea that we take for granted that we are here walking on Earth, meaning that we are beings that happen to live on Earth, and maybe in the future we could live, we can like inhabit the entire cosmos. So that idea places the human as separate from the Earth. So the human being, once again, the Cartesian split is at the root of this idea, meaning that separation between the mind and the world of objects is the separation between human beings and the planet Earth. Our relation to the planet Earth is that of, we call our home. And we could very much build another home somewhere else. Now, through the perspective of Earth-based traditions, there's no such thing as we walking on the Earth. We are the Earth having a human experience, as much as the universe, as much as the Earth is the universe having an earthly experience. From this perspective, we have to understand the cosmos as not this vast space populated by things, but the cosmos is an event, and we are at the tip of this event. So it's more of a movement in time. The cosmos being an event is at it's at the base of the new cosmology, the one that talks about the Big Bang. The Big Bang that's what the Big Bang is all about. It's this explosion of being that keeps unfolding, and like in this process of creation and destruction, and a creative process that is happening when the supernovas or the galaxies or the stars, there's a lot of creativity happening there, and this process keeps unfolding and unfolding and unfolding until it reaches us, until it becomes us. So we are looking at the universe. In a sense, we are the universe looking back at itself. We are the moment when the universe develops this self-reflective consciousness to be able to see itself happening. So it took 15 billion years for that process to develop, for the universe to become human beings, or for the universe to acquire, to achieve this, to have lips or noses or eyes, ears, and be capable of observing itself. So if you think from that perspective, it sounds kind of too bold to imagine that the universe took 15 billion years to become human beings. The Earth itself had to churn for 4.4 billion years before it got things right and life could emerge out of it. And we think that we can blast some nukes on the poles of Mars to liberate the atmosphere and quickly engineer a planet that is going to be livable. Okay. Maybe we should save the questions for after the break, so I can just try to wrap it up. Is it okay for you? So what was I talking about before? Yeah, before that, I wanted to bridge it to
The Matrix?
Huh?
The Matrix?
The Matrix, for instance. So the Matrix is another form of literalism. Of course there is a Matrix. The Matrix is a metaphor. We are all living in the Matrix, meaning that, precisely what I said, we can't leave the Cartesian split. We can't leave the Promethean meat. We can't leave the mode of being in which physicality has to be the evidence that proves that our lives make sense. So we are trapped into some assumptions that are not easy to dismantle. They just won't go away by the power of thought or by meditating about them, because they are there. They're deeply entrenched in the innermost core of our beings. The Matrix is a metaphor to let us become aware of that. But the good thing about a metaphor is that once you realize that the Matrix is a metaphor, so you can liberate yourself from it. If you do the work that is necessary for that and have support from your community, you can slowly start to disentangle yourself from the Matrix.
Do you have to take the red one or the blue one?
But if the Matrix is not a metaphor, if the Matrix is actual physical thing, if we are living in a computer simulation, for instance, there's no way you can liberate yourself from that. You don't have that capacity. You don't have that power. It's not about you because you are trapped into something else which is higher than you. It's a physical or digital reality maybe. You see the parallels between atomism, the idea that everything is built off like these building blocks, the atomic or subatomic particles. Today we know that they are not even particles, right? But we had this idea of particles and how it translates into the digital mindset into which the atoms were translated into pixels. So everything is built off these little building blocks. So there's what I'm trying to say here is there's like a worldview operating that we don't usually pay attention to. We're not capable to see it for what it is and give it a name. And that's how psychology mostly talking about Jung and even Freud and Hillman and many others who have pioneered this terrain of understanding what a psyche is. And when we understand the psyche, and we understand that we are living in psyche, so again, when I'm talking about soul, I'm talking about psyche. We are inhabiting psyche, but we are framing the psychic world we live under some premises of modernity, of the Prometheanism that we all take for granted. And if we are to have a healthier relationship with the Earth, and maybe it's not really about how to fix a broken planet, but it's about how to really bridge the gap, how to heal that split that has separated us from ourselves. So this is pretty much, I think that Trump being elected the president is an opportunity for us as much as it is a catastrophe. It's an opportunity for us to start looking at things from this other perspective. What does it really mean? It means that we haven't been giving the unconscious enough attention, enough conscious attention. We haven't been engaging with it consciously. And it's trying to speak on its own terms. That's what is really happening. And the unconscious is not there. It's not in Trump. It's here. It's within every single one of us. So, all the xenophobia, misogyny, and racism, patriarchy, you name it. These are all aspects that we have within ourselves. And because they are part of this idea that have shaped and created the world we inhabit. So I just want to make like a parenthesis. I'm not criticizing modernity. I'm not criticizing the modern project. I'm not one of those who would say, this was all a mistake and we need to go back to prehistorical ways of being. That's not my point. I think it was crucial. It was a necessary stage in our development, in evolution of the human species, of the evolution of the universe, the cosmos, and the archetypes. We had to go through that. It gave us a lot that everyone is grateful for. It gave us these things that we have here, these beautiful things. I am only able to be talking with you here because of technology. If it wasn't for technology, I wouldn't even have had the opportunity to find this audience. So I'm indebted to technology. But we have to understand how much we are putting our energies into projecting something into technology that it cannot bring to us. Because there we would have to go to a different set of ideas according to which basically technology, like someone said, is not organic, right? And we are organisms. We like to have the metaphor of like artificial intelligence, or maybe that we say that we can do plant medicine work and that's going to like reboot our minds, or going to reset our beings, or reformat, right, our brains. So we are full of technological analogies because that's the language we have, because that's all we see. Because and technology itself, by the way, it is sort of a materialization of language. It's language being brought into the concrete manifestation. And if you take it to the extreme, it means achieving the Cartesian split would be like the ultimate accomplishment of the Cartesian split. We would finally, if we manage to upload our consciousness into a computer and get rid of all the organic aspects of ourselves, we would be accomplishing the ultimate Cartesian premise, which is separating the mind from the body, definitely, for good. And of course, to my opinion, it cannot happen. Because again, we are not minds separate from substance. our minds are not a thinking thing that's floating here and temporarily inhabiting a body, but our own minds, they emerge out of the fullness of our bodies. We are embodied beings. We're not only thinking with our brains, but we're thinking with our entire bodies. Every single organ is playing a role in that. And for entheogenic medicines, for instance, different medicines they have different effects in different parts of the body. You could say that LSD, that was the thing I addressed before, but I didn't really went to it. LSD, it operates in the mind, so it triggers the experience comes from here. But if you take ecstasy, you feel that it's actually happening right here in the chest and in the heart part. It's a different experience. And whereas ayahuasca, and mushrooms, or maybe even peyote, they're more on the guts. So it's more of a guttural experience. It's purgative, and you feel it's emotional, and the visions you have are the emotions themselves being experienced through the liver, through the guts. Now, you won't find the liver on the front page of a magazine, right? Sometimes when we see a heart, it's usually the candy-coated version of a heart, right? A very childish understanding of the heart, whereas the brain is everywhere. So just trying to bring our attention to the fact that we have this underlying myth, the Cartesian myth, that we are brains on sticks, that we are minds floating on a body that could be discarded and that we could go and become digital. But that actually is trying to go into a process of eliminating life itself. Life as this organic process of coming into being that never stops. If you just look into nature, if you just notice phenomenologically how nature operates, and it start to follow the movements in nature, how the fractals or how the plants are gonna, unfold and come into being, we see that there's a process there. There is completely different from the engineering mode that we see in operation through applying technology to find solutions to whatever problems we have. Okay. How much time do we have after?
We're at 8:25 right now, so that's about 9 or 9:30. 9:30 probably will have to start getting everything out.
So we have another hour or so?
Probably that's a little longer, yeah.
Okay. So I have this short film I made about shamanism, but looking at shamanism through psychological lenses. So how can shamanism be useful as a tool for understanding our psyches? Maybe if you guys want to watch that, we can go for that. Maybe if you want to engage more into the discussion, I have plenty to say. I would love to talk about maybe about our myths through making analogies with film and other media. I'll leave it open, I think, for people to see what you think is better.